Our stewardship focus this year is Abide, the root of generosity. In our first week, we talked about how God invites us and wants for us to be in relationship with Him, to experience and grow in His love. In our second week, we discussed how God's love for us and our love of God will lead us, compel us, encourage us to live sacrificially so that others know and experience God's love. When we abide in Christ, we give of ourselves, offer our time and talents, and invest in our neighbors. This is how lives are changed. It's how the world is changed. Some of you may know Richard Denny and Lydia Barrett. They've been a part of the McFarlin family for over 25 years. They have raised their children and now their grandchildren in our church, served on mission teams, and sung in our choir. But there is more to their faith story than what has happened within the walls of our church. Part of their journey as disciples is a beautiful example of what it looks like to bear fruit as we abide in God's love and live generously and sacrificially.
I'm Lydia Barrett, and it's my husband Richard Denny. I literally grew up in the church. I'm a Methodist preacher's kid. I can't imagine not being at the church. It's had every aspect of my life.
I was a military brat, raised in a family that traveled the world with my dad, so I grew up moving, traveling, wherever he went, whether it was in a war zone or whether it was not. When he wasn't working in the service, it was just his habit to take care of people. He always did, and I think it may have rubbed off. I first went to Africa about 6 years ago.
It was right after Amelia, our granddaughter, was born, and the school that Richard helped build is Amelia's school, so it's kind of cool.
One of my dearest friends came to me because he knew that I spent a lot of time in the wild and the woods and stuff, and said, I'm doing mission work in Africa and I need your help. And then he started telling me about the children there who were in such bad condition. I said, sure. Then it just became something that got into my heart. My only previous experience with Africa was in Tanzania with my children in the game parks and Serengeti and places you go with tourists and stuff, which is completely different than a real Africa. When I got into Uganda, I was confronted with things that changed my life. Death is imminent. Those children are sick often. They're always hungry. They don't have medical care. It's a totally different world than we imagine.
Ben said to Richard, you know, you really should come here with us to do this, to see it, because they want to know you. There was a gentleman from Hope Seeds who donated seeds and that sort of thing. The problem with the seeds is that people had donated seeds before, but nobody taught them how to garden. Richard taught them, which was pretty neat, and then helped build a school and talked to a gentleman there and put in a cistern so they could continue to water these gardens and that sort of thing. And then went back 2 years later, and it was quite successful. They had a beautiful garden.
A little while ago, Richard and I were talking, having a cup of coffee together, and he told me about a story of one of his visits. When he arrived in Namanagi, he was just swarmed by children shouting, "Bustani, Bustani!" When he asked what they were saying, his friend said to him, "The gardener, the gardener."
Everything you give, you get back tenfold. Whether it's in your heart, whether it's what you can see, whether it's what you do for your children in the future and set an example.
When you get that close to a place where people live on the edge all the time, change your concept of what's important. You reach a point in your life where you say, what more can I do? And when I step out of this profession, what am I going to continue to do? Once you get used to serving people, you won't quit. If I died tomorrow, I'd be okay, because I know I left a lot behind that will help somebody.
Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me.